blessed. 8 truths that will turn your world right side up. As we look at what the Bible has to say about being blessed, Jesus actually addresses this on what is commonly referred to as the Sermon on the Mount. So Matthew chapter 5, he goes through and he says a series of things that if we do, we will be blessed. I think all of us can appreciate a checklist of sorts. Some of us are better at that. Some of that's the way we work. We just like to see, okay, I need to get this done, this done, this done, this done, especially when you got a lot going on. And so you look for ways that we can just check things off the list. And so Jesus lays this out for us and says, hey, if you do these things, you will be blessed. And so last week we started talking about 3 of those things, and this week we talked about 2 of them. And the first one we talked about is blessed are those that hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. So Jesus is demonstrating and laying out for us that it's our job to hunger and thirst for righteousness. What does righteousness mean? We talked about it means right living. And so righteousness, so we need to hunger and thirst to live rightly. And then God's responsibility in that is that we will be blessed for doing so. And we will be filled. So we're responsible to hunger and thirst for God's righteousness. But He promises if we do that, He will satisfy. He will fill us. So the question I posed to us this past week was, what is it that we are hungering and thirsting for? Is it righteousness? For many of us, we can't say that that's true because our homes, if that's the case, our homes would be more blessed than they are, but they aren't as blessed as they could be. And maybe it's because our appetite is wrong. Our focus is wrong. What we're hungering and thirsting for isn't filling us. Because God can't fill us if we're not eating the right things. I mean, I can say, you know what, if I want to be in shape, I want to be healthy, but this candy bar looks real good. Like that's not going to work, right? We'll be like, God, well, I blessed it. I pray over this food. I say, God, help it to nourish my body, and it's fried goodness. Like that's a pointless prayer, and we often do that kind of prayer, right? We're like, well, we know this isn't good for me, but I'm asking God to bless it anyway. And so we do the same thing with our spiritual world. We're like, God, fill me with your righteousness. Fill me with, help me to be blessed in this area. And God goes, well, your responsibility is to hunger for it, to thirst for it, and I will fill you. And so as we looked at being blessed in righteousness, how do we do that? I think there's a couple things that we need to look at, and we talked about this last week, that we can't do, that don't work. This idea of legalistic Christianity. The rules are the rules, and we follow the rules. Why? Because they're the rules. And then the other one is lukewarm Christianity. This is, you believe God exists, but live as though He doesn't. That's a gut check moment. That's a kind of a gut check question. Do you believe God exists and live every other aspect of your life as if He doesn't exist? For me, I looked at this idea of in my personal life, if in my home with my family, if we didn't pray together, if I can't remember the last time that I got on my knees, that I gathered my family together and we held hands or put our arms around each other and asked God to move in a situation, for a miracle, for even just for common everyday stuff. If I can't tell you the last time that I did that individually or as a family we did that together, then my faith may be spiritually lukewarm. And we talked about a number of other circumstances where our faith may be becoming lukewarm, that we believe God exists, but we live as though he doesn't. We don't go to God in prayer because we believe he exists, but we don't bring our needs before him in prayer. Legalistic Christianity, only rules without relationship lead to rebellion. That's what we talked about on Sunday. That you can say have a bunch of do's and don'ts, what's and whatnots. You can have a whole list of how we should function and live. Why do we need to do these things? Well, because it says we have to. What we talked about last week is that we need to mourn over our sin and realize that it's not our failures, our sins, our mistakes. We shouldn't be so concerned about how it hurts us, that our concern should be on how it hurts the heart of God, how it hurts our relationship with God. And that's the same concept for us today, that we need to realize that it's not Jesus lays out rules for us that will honor him and glorify him. And if we don't live by those rules, if we don't do those things, that we dishonor him. And so by dishonoring him, we hurt God. We hurt our relationship with God. And so the point of this is not just to do these rules so I can seem righteous. I do these rules so that my relationship with God is glorifying. And so we talked about that a lot. So this idea of what is it that you individually, as a family, what is it that we are spending our time, energy, and resources hungering and thirsting for? And maybe today we need an appetite change. That we need to hunger and thirst for righteousness more. Because God promises he will fill us. And if you're not full, it's because you're not hungering and thirsting for his righteousness. We talked about the second one is that blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. This is a big one. Jesus told us a story of a king and two servants. The king has the one servant come to him and he says, "You owe me a great deal of money. I want you to pay me back right now." The servant says, "I have no ability to do that. Please give me more time. Show me mercy." And the king says, "You know what? I'm going to not just give you more time. I'm going to wipe that debt clean. And now you don't owe me anything." And then the servant leaves and sees another servant who owes him, and the Bible says clearly that he owes him hardly anything. But he does owe him something. He says, "If you don't pay me right now," and the guy says, "I can't," "then I will get you thrown in jail." The king finds out what the first servant did, and he says, "You wicked servant, I extended you mercy for something you could not pay back, and it was massive. And you couldn't even forgive this person or extend mercy to this person that owed you nothing." See, for us in our lives, we kind of laid this out. How do we live merciful? We need to live mercifully. And one of the things that we said, we can show mercy in our homes by being kind when they don't deserve it. That's so important for us, that we need to show mercy, be kind when they don't deserve it. Why? Because we didn't deserve God's mercy. And his mercy is way more important to my life, to my eternity, to the way that the hope that I have today, than whatever someone could have done to me. So we need to show mercy by being kind, even when it doesn't make sense. We also talked about how do we show mercy. The first thing we talked about was showing mercy in our homes by overlooking irritations and offenses. I think this is so important that we not fixate on the mistakes and the shortcomings and those offenses and irritations, but to focus on what is good and extend mercy in those irritations and offenses. No relationship is perfect. And if you think, well, if I just end this relationship and move on to the next one, I'll find the perfect match, you are fooling yourself. The fact is there is no perfect relationship, and relationships only work when we are willing to not just give 50%, but 100% of us, to extend mercy to people, even in the things that drive us crazy. And that's what's important. And so as we look in this series to have a blessed life, God reminds us to be blessed. We must hunger and thirst for right living, righteousness. And we must remember that if we hunger and thirst for the right things, we will be filled. That's not a question mark. That's not a maybe. If we hunger and thirst for the right things, we will be satisfied. All of us, in some area of our lives, need an appetite change. And so I pray that we ask God today to change my appetite, to show me in my life where I am hungering and thirsting for something that isn't righteousness. And the other thing is we need to learn to extend mercy. I want God's mercy. And it says that blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Who is going to give us mercy? God. If we extend it to Him, to others. That's the deal. How do we do that? Do we overlook irritations and offenses? Proverbs says, forgive mistakes. Nagging parts the best of friends. If we want to live right, we need to do that. We need to extend mercy in our home by letting go of past hurts and failures. If we hold on to everything they've done in the past to hurt us, rightly or wrongly, they've hurt us. People will hurt us. It's inevitable when we get close to people. And the bottom line is will we hold on to those things? The kind of the analogy somebody once said was if you're holding on to hurts and irritations and offenses, if you're holding on to those things, your hands aren't open for God's blessing. And I think that's a great visual for us. If I'm so white-knuckled holding on to hurts from the past, I won't be ready to receive God's blessing. So I'm going to end on that tonight. I want to thank you for tuning in tonight as we kind of recapped last week's message. If you have not watched last week's message or any of this series, I would encourage you to go back, go subscribe to our YouTube channel, go to our website, and catch up this week to this week's service. So this next Sunday, we will be continuing week 3 of our series, and I'm really excited about it, and I hope that you will tune in for that. Have a great night.